Hydra, a fungus-infested water world, and Scytulus, a bloated gas giant whose outer layers swarmed with phantasmal aerial vermin. It was the second of these the Whispering Hand was bound, though its destination was not the planet itself, but the lesser Leviathan suspended in its anemic exosphere. From a distance, the structure appeared to be a dark blemish against the skittless ochre and rusted swirl. But as the vessel drew closer, the moat grew spiny and misshapen, like a tumor in metastasis. Closer still, it resolved into a sprawl of interconnected metal modules of varying size and shape. A monolithic spindle rose from the center of the tangle, towering over the other structures and trailing titanic extraction pipes into the world below. The spindle's cog-like tears shimmered with lights as they revolved. But further from the center of the expanse, it grew dark, and the domes of its component modules were cracked open to the void, as though they had been racked by some terrible violence. Though the sprawl was artificial, it was still a cancer. From its growth, had long ago become rampant and perverse, twisted out of any semblance of order by the countless masters who presided over it. Most who had begun their stewardship in sobriety, but few had ended that way, for despite the intent of its architects, discord ran deep in this place. Whether it was in the influence of the baleful giant that leached upon the consequence of some intrinsic flaw, the sky hive was tainted, its history saturated in strife. And yet it endured countless millennia, grudgingly paying its tithes to the Imperium, and ever quite embracing a heresy that would have invited retaliation. There were myriad such cancers growing in the cracks of the Imperium, but few as furtive. The place had acquired many names, some truer than others. Its formal designation was Scytulus Atlas, but its current masters had ennobled it as the unfolding Nexus. However, to the millions who eked out a living in its corroded avenues, it was simply the rat's cradle. "I do not like it," Porel had decided. "Not at all." The sky hive rotated slowly above the conclave table. Its tangled lineaments reproduced in perfect holographic fidelity. Its presence felt like a taint upon the room, upon her. Taint? Adib dismissed the notion. Such irrationality had corroded the collective psyche of the Guila. It had no place in the thinking of a Tau. "Your thoughts, Chassel." "It is dangerous," Akuro replied. "I occur," Adib said. "Yet we must proceed with the mission." They were alone in the conclave chamber. Her first impressions of the fire warrior had proved correct, and over the passing days she had come to value his counsel, even to regard him as a friend. After the artifice of the Whispertide Congress, his directness was bracing. "Why?" Akuro asked. "Why are we taking risks, Porel? The true reason." "Because the High Ambassador has decreed it. The Yuxa system interests him. I did not know why. Porel Shesin keeps his own counsel, but we must trust his judgment." "He is young," Akuro said flatly. "He is gifted," Adib corrected. "Exceptionally so. The Empire recognizes that and rewards his talent." Akuro was silent for a moment, brooding. "It is fortunate that a seeker walks beside us on this path. We are due to dock in 9 hours. I must go, Porel." "Why, Porel?" Adib asked as he turned to go. "I do not understand. Why have you chosen Shasfe Boral as your aide?" "I did not choose her. She was assigned to me for this mission." "Do you trust her?" Adib wanted to ask. Thank you, Chassel, she said instead. See to your troops. When he was gone, she returned with her attention to the hologram. She wasn't sure why she had asked the question, or why Akuro's answers troubled her. In fact, the closer they drew to their objective, the less certain she was of anything. Alone in the darkness of a Serenity cell, Overvol listened to the voice. It had grown stronger over the past few days, swelling from a subliminal murmur to an evanescent whispering. Yet its words still eluded him. "What are you trying to tell me?" he hissed. Poor Adib's nostril slits dilated with disgust as she stepped into the ship's disembarkation ramp, and the acid stench of the sky hive hit her. She imagined a broken machine leaking the black sludge that powered so much of the Imperium's technology. Quelling her nausea, she studied the immense expanse of the hangar bay as she descended, her data drone hovering above her head like a domed halo. The walls of the cavernous chamber were corroded and slick with filth. Its floor knotted with trailing pipes and discarded tools. Dozens of subhuman laborers toiled in the labyrinth of machinery, their bodies crudely fused to metal limbs, their eyes as vacant as their minds. It had always puzzled Adib that the Imperium embraced such atrocities while condemning the elegant drones of the Tau Empire. So much of their suffering is self-inflicted, she mused. Noteworthy, Fiovre Duc reminded her. Adib didn't know whether the stock engineer was referring to the odor or some obscure detail only he could see. But she had learned not quite enough to endure such remarks. Dauk's concept of noteworthy rarely converged with anyone else's. He had found so much of note during their approach to the hive, while Adib had seen only depressitude. Why had Faisal led them to this floating sewer city? Akuro and another armored figure were waiting for her at the foot of the ramp. They donned their helmets, so their faces were hidden behind their flat, sensor-studded visors. They gave an impassive, machine-like aspect. Akuro's modded crimson armor bore a 5-armed sunburst in its breastplate, personal colors and heraldry granted to him when he'd earned his rank. In contrast, his companion's uniform was the stark, unadorned white of the Whispertide Conclave. "You're Govisa. Understand, there is to be no violence, Chassel?" Adib asked, indicating the human soldiers lined up on either side of the ramp. Both the support teams were present, the troops' rifles slung over their shoulders as they crouched in the stance of watchful repose. They wore lighter variants of the Fire Warrior's armor, retaining the breastplates and shoulder pads, but lacking the contorted plates that sheathed their superiors' limbs. Their helmets were fitted with tilted lenses that covered their eyes, but left their faces bare. "The Stormlit know their duty," Akuro replied. It was a great honor, and several of the Govisa puffed in their chests at his words. "I have faith in your faith," Adib acknowledged. The deception was flawless. Despite the armor and helmet, she had expected to feel something, but all she sensed was what her eyes told her. This was just another fire warrior. It was as if the Seeker had somehow constricted his spirit when he had donned his armor. He has become what he seems to be, she thought. There was a pneumatic hiss at the hangar's hatch. "And so we begin," Adib murmured. His vision enhanced by the sensors of his borrowed helmet, Kuyahai studied the newcomer as it approached. Though it was swathed in a hooded purple mantle, there were visible qualities of posture and gait that spoke volumes. "Pourve falsa," Adib declared when the stranger stopped before them. She saw it too. Kuya-hai realized, impressed. Few outside the ethereal were so perceptive. You know me too well, old friend, the newcomer said, pushing back its hood to reveal the familiar face of the missing emissary. He smiled and stretched out his arms to encompass the others. On behalf of the Order of the Ever-Turning Cog, I offer you welcome to the unfolding Nexus, a new-born engine of reason among the benighted Guila. Kuya-hai was perplexed. On the hololith, Falsal had appeared pompous, superficial even, but in person he was almost electric, as though an avid vitality burned within him. It has been too many years since we last conversed, Porve Adib, the emissary continued. Porel, she corrected. I was elevated shortly after your disappearance. My apologies, Porel. It pleases me that your talents have been recognized. Smoothly he reached out and grasped her hands. It was a brazen gesture that breached all etiquette, and Adib stiffened visibly. I have so much to share with you, Falsal said, his eyes bright. This Guila relic harbors many wonders that may advance the greater good. You came alone, emissary? Akuro asked bluntly. Faisal turned to face the fire warrior, his smile unwavering. No, but we thought it best you were greeted by one who is known to you. But I do not know you. Akuro indicated the iron talisman hanging from the emissary's neck, a four-toothed cog, embossed with a double loop of infinity. Nor do I recognize the sept you speak for. Your message indicated urgency, Porve, Adib interjected, extricating her hands. I would like to meet these remarkable Guila you have uncovered. Of course, Porel. Your embassy was not accompanied by an exalted one? Unfortunately, there were few, and the needs of the Empire many, Adib replied. Kuya-hai studied Faisal's face, expecting relief or disappointment, but there was nothing. I cannot read him, he realized. How can that be? On impulse, he glanced at the Govisa troops, searching for Voyle. The big man stood in front of his team, his expression distant, as if attention was elsewhere. Though they talked occasionally during the remainder of the voyage, Kuya-hai was no closer to deciphering the man's significance. And yet he did not doubt it. Chance is a myth perpetrated by those who only seek what seems to be, Kuya-hai's master had taught. A seeker looks beneath the lies and finds lines that bind. And where they have become twisted or frayed, he follows, for his path is to mend when he can, or exercise when he cannot. It was the first great axiom of the Yasukeor, the philosophy which a seeker served the greater good. My path has led me true, Kuya-hai judged. Nothing is what it seems to be. Support Team 1. The ship is under your watch. Be vigilant. Akuro commanded as he strode towards the hangar doors. Team 2, with me. Voyle shook his head, trying to break free of the voice that haunted or hunted him. Govisa Ui, someone said behind him. He turned and stared at the expectant faces of... Who were they? Voyle, the Chassel calls us, a hatchet-faced woman snapped. Urzel, he remembered, and the rest followed. Move out, he ordered. Go. I'm losing my mind, Voyle thought as he followed the squad. Somehow the prospect troubled him less than the alternatives he could imagine. 3 vehicles waited outside the spaceport. 2 were open-top trucks. The third a massive armored car, emblazoned with the sigil of the ever-turning cog. A group of robed figures watched over them, their long-barreled rifles leveled at the surrounding buildings. More were stationed along the segmented wall that encircled the spaceport like a metal serpent. Floodlights illuminated the perimeter, but beyond their reach everything was swathed in gloom. Voyle looked and counted less than a dozen lights in the iron sky of the dome. He knew each was a vast, burning globe, but it would take hundreds to illuminate a city-sized territory like this one. The whole region is dying, he guessed, remembering the many dark modules he'd seen from space. As the party approached the vehicles, Voyle saw the guards' purple robes were embroidered with the concentric rings of unity, but the bronze masks they wore under their hoods were less reassuring, for they were fashioned to resemble something more insect than man, with jutting compound jaws and bulbous, multifaceted lenses. "Watchmen of the second rotation," the Tau emissaries explained. "They are here for your protection." "Protection from what?" Stormlight demanded. "Regrettably, the Order's enlightenment is not entirely unopposed. A few dissident factions remain active in the outer districts, but they are as incoherent as they are ignorant. The spaceport is under the Order's jurisdiction, but to reach Alpha Axis, we must traverse a troubled region. I advise against proceeding, Porel," Stormlight warned Adib. "Let their leaders meet us here." With a whir of gyros, one of the guards marched towards them, its footsteps reverberating under its weight. It was taller and more powerfully built than its fellows, its chest enclosed in a slab-like breastplate. In place of a hood, it wore a back-swept helmet with a vertically slit visor that pulsed with blue light. An augmetic arm extended from its right shoulder, dwarfing the limb below, and terminating in a three-fingered claw. Alongside that monstrous appendage, the watchman's ornate rifle looked almost delicate. "My designation is Aeodide Alpha, Warden Prime. Your security is my primary directive. Please board the transports. For the greatest good." "There is no cause for concern," Faisal urged. "The Warden is the Order's preeminent guardian. Be advised, I have made provisions for safety." "I am not familiar with First Contact Protocol," Faisal said gently, "but this is not my first contact, I assure you. The Order's offer of friendship is sincere." "And the Empire's," Adib parried. "But the open hand must be firm of grip. You will respect my precautions, Porvi." "Naturally, Porel." Faisal bowed. Adib turned to Akuro. "We will proceed." The Govisa climbed in the back of the truck, while Faisal ushered the Tau into the armored car. The watchmen boarded the second truck, lining up along its sides in regimented ranks, with the Warden at their center. Voyle gripped the guardrail as the vehicle surged forward and took its place at the rear of the convoy, with the other truck leading the car shielded between them. Once they were underway, the troops began to talk, eager to weigh up their strange hosts, but he silenced them. "Stay sharp," he ordered, unslinging his pulse rifle. "Trust nothing." "How far?" Akuro asked. He hadn't removed his helmet, and its sensors glowed in the dingy cabin of the armored car. Adib suspected he would have preferred to travel with his troops, but he was unwilling to leave her side. "The Axis is 5 zones distant, a journey of many hours," Faisal answered. "Regrettably, our only functioning port is on the hive's outskirts. That is one of the limitations we hope to rectify with your aid. Firever Doc will make full assessment of your requirements," Adib said, keeping his tone neutral. "My team stands ready to assist you," Doc concurred earnestly, though his eyes didn't leave the car's window slit. Doubtless he saw much of note outside. "I predict there is considerable work ahead of us." "The Order's resources will be placed at your disposal. Honored Firever," Faisal promised. "Together we will achieve great things." Assuming we reach an accord, Adib cautioned, sounding querulous even to herself. In the cramped cabin, Faisal's presence was almost overpowering. We shall, Porel. We shall reach the axis, and you will understand everything. Faisal smiled, and Adib felt a rush of unwelcome affection for him. No, it was simpler than that, more primal. How he has changed, she mused. He looks younger than he... Bright light flashed to her face, breaking the fascination. Abruptly, Faisal was gone and hollowed out. Predatory things sat in his place, appraising her with hungry eyes. Forgive me, Porel, the seeker said from the seat beside the apparition. He extinguished his helmet light, and with it the horror. I fear my helm has developed an error. See that you correct it, fire warrior, Adib replied, surprised that her terror hadn't reached her voice. Perhaps it was because shame eclipsed the fear. The seeker had seen her desire. No! The desire was not mine, she thought angrily, willing Kuyahai to see that. Are you well, my friend? Faisal asked, his face furrowing with concern. Perfectly well, Adib said. It was the most profound lie she had ever told. The twilight district passed in a blur of crooked tenements, their growth stunted by confines of the iron sky. Some had been reduced to scorched husks, while others had collapsed to rubble. Citizens haunted the squalor like flesh-bound ghosts, either alone or in small groups, often huddled around open fires. All were emaciated and gray, their bodies as wasted as their world. Most ignored the convoy, but a few watched it pass with empty eyes. Sometimes squads of purple-robed watchmen moved among them, their weapons swiveling around as they patrolled. Once the vehicles swerved around a towering bipedal automaton, with a warrior sitting astride it. The machine stomped through the streets, rocking back and forth to its own graceless rhythm, as its searchlight scoured the hovels. This is a war zone, Voyle judged, or the tail end of one, occupied territory. They had been traveling for almost half an hour when the road narrowed and carried them to a stretch of gutted manufactories. The vehicles slowed to a halt, and Voyle heard a clamor from somewhere up ahead, presumably the watchman disembarking. Arzel, take a look, he ordered. The Pathfinder nodded and clambered to the truck's cabin. Something's on the road ahead, she said. Looks like another truck, but... She threw herself flat as a barrage of gunfire erupted to the ruins to their right. One of the Guvisa snapped backwards and fell as a bullet punched into his face. Another ricocheted off Voile's helmet. Stay low and return fire! Voyle shouted, ducking as bullets battered the vehicle's sides. There was a chorus of electronic chimes as his troops activated their pulse rifles, following the sibilant whine of plasma bolts when they opened fire. Voyle raised his head and scanned the ruins through his rifle's scope, weaving about until he locked onto a figure lurking behind a broken window. His weapon pinged when he increased the magnification and drew his target into sharper focus. It was a man in ragged gray fatigues, his head protected by a rusty iron helmet, painted with a stylized M. An archaic rebreather covered his mouth, its tube snaking over his shoulders in a bulky backpack. Above the mask, his eyes were bloodshot wounds and a pallid face riddled with scars and sores. He appeared to be in the terminal stages of some flesh-eating pestilence, yet he stood straight, unbowed by his bulky, stubborn gun. This lot looked worse than ours, Voyle said sourly, lining up on the attacker's face. Before he could fire, there was a voltaic crackle, and a streak of light flayed his mark like an electric whip. The man convulsed as a current played about him, igniting his clothes and charring his flesh. Voyle turned and saw the warden marching across the building's rubble-strewn courtyard, with her watchman following in a wide arc. Venting an electronic ululation, she seized a chunk of debris with her claw and hurled it at a crouching enemy. Simultaneously, her rifle's glassy barrel glowed blue and spat another jagged bolt into the ruins. Without slowing her stride, her troops fired a volley of explosive rounds in perfect synchronicity, every bullet firing a different foe. "They're fighting as one," Boyle murmured, studying the lethal combat symmetry. He felt calm now, as if the skirmish had elevated him above his private damnation. The voice was still there, oozing around the battlefield, like a spirit of war. But it almost made sense now. Can they hear it too? Boyle wondered hazily as he slipped into harmony with the Order's enforcers, becoming another cog in a precision killing machine, aiming and firing and executing the raiders without hesitation. Bolts exploded around the advancing watchmen, frequently tearing through their robes and ricocheting off the armor beneath. The warden appeared impervious, but occasionally one of her cohorts would jerk or stumble as a bullet penetrated his armor. One fell to its knees with a shattered leg, but continued to fire as its comrades marched on. Another took a round in the throat and toppled over. "They don't lack courage," one of the Guvisa yelled. Maybe, Boyle thought, or maybe they just don't know any better. "No heroics! This isn't our fight." "And they don't need us anyway," he gauged. The ambush was already faltering under the warden's counterattack. Whoever the raiders, or rebels were, they were woefully outclassed by the Order's troops. But they were fighting to the bitter end. This wasn't a chance attack. The poor bastards threw everything they had at us. Why? As the warden reached the building, a raider threw a grenade from the window above. She seared him with lightning and lashed out with her claw, snatching the grenade from the air and hurling it back. But it detonated a few meters above her. She staggered under the concussion, her augmentic arm whipping about as she fought for balance. What? Boyle's rifle pinged repeatedly as he zoomed in on her whirling limb. The explosion has torn away a patch of its armor, revealing not raw machinery, but what looked like more plating, though it was rounded and dark blue in color, almost organic, like insect chitin. Boyle froze, staring down his scope at the warden as she recovered and stomped into the building, leaving him zoomed in on nothing but memories. Void black eyes, holding him transfixed as the predator uncoils to embrace him. "Status report, 2. His helmet's communicator hissed. "The Stormlight. 1 Govisa dead, 1 lightly wounded," Boyle answered automatically. "Situation under control, Sarcel. Acknowledged 2. Hold your position." As the last of the watchmen entered the building, Boyle made up his mind. "Cover me!" He ordered a squad and vaulted from the deck. Keeping his eyes on the injured watchman who'd been left behind, he sprinted to its fallen comrade. The warrior lay on his face, motionless. "What do you expect to find?" Boyle asked himself as he knelt by the body. A cold and thirsty poison awakened in his blood, and watching the world through his eyes. He heaved the warrior to his back, and a third arm slid free from its robes. Like the warden's augmetic, it was encased in segmented iron plates, but ended in side-like blade, or was unmistakably blown. "Mutants!" Boyle spat. He appraised the gaping wound in the warrior's throat. A large caliber round had torn through it, almost decapitating the creature. Nothing human could have survived such trauma. But did that mean anything here? As he reached for its mask, the subterranean swirl of the voice surged into sudden clarity. "No!" Boyle froze. That denial was the first meaningful word that had been said to him. Perhaps even the first time it had been truly aware of him. "You were never talking to me, were you?" Boyle whispered. "I was only listening in." "No!" The prohibition was more forceful now, yet it held no sway over him. "What don't you want me to see?" Boyle challenged. "Why?" A bullet drilled in the ground by his feet. He turned and saw the kneeling watchman had leveled its rifle at him. "They're yours, aren't they? All of them," Voyle said to the voice. "Go now," it breathed. Now it had the key to his head. It was learning fast. Did that mean it would start pulling his strings soon? "No!" Voyle snarled back and activated his helmet's transmitter. "Urzel! Wounded watchman to my right. Take it out." A bright bolt lanced across the courtyard and erased the warrior's head in a bright burst of plasma. She didn't hesitate, Voyle thought with grim satisfaction. I might be losing my mind, but my squad still trusts me. Ignoring the voice, he pulled the dead watchman's mask aside and froze, watching and waiting for the moment when he can claim another to feed the hunger that can never be sated. Voyle switched his transmitter to the squad-wide channel. "Seize the vehicles! The watchmen are hostile. Take them down." He looked up and saw the watchman emerging from the building, doubtless summoned by his unseen master. Her helmet swung around, its visor slit pulsing with blue light as she scanned the battleground. "What's under there?" Voyle wondered, glancing back at the corpse. Its face was a travesty of humanity, with deeply recessed eyes and rubbery, mauve skin. A chitinous ridge ran from its forehead to the bridge of its nose, beneath which its face erupted into a nest of pink tendrils. Many of them were still twitching, as if animated by a life of their own. The voice was gnawing at Voile's mind now, but he shut it out, sensing that every word he spoke would sink another root into his soul, like one of the corpse's undying tendrils. "I'm not yours!" he rasped. "Seize the vehicles!" Voile's voice hissed inside Kuyahai's helmet. The seeker acted without conscious thought, moving before the command had even concluded. The tone of Voile's first word was enough to tell him the wheel of possibilities had turned, carrying them from diplomacy to conflict. The cause and consequences could be assessed later. For now, only action mattered. "Do not be alarmed," Faisal was saying beside him. "The watchman will—" Kuyahai's armored elbow slammed into the side of his head. As the emissary slumped over, the seeker leapt up and surged towards the driver. The man turned, and Kuyahai's fist slammed between his eyes, throwing him against the wheel with stunning force. Faisal had called the pale, hairless creature a timekeeper of the fourth rotation. He had been one of the armored warriors Kuyahai wouldn't have risked holding back, but for now, killing was best avoided. "The watchmen are hostile," Voile's warning continued. "Take them down." "What is happening, Seeker?" Adib asked, shocked by the sudden violence. "We are betrayed," Akuro answered flatly, activating his pulse rifle. He had also heard the message, but his reaction had inevitably trailed behind Kuyahai's. "See to your men, Stormlight," the Seeker commanded. "We must return to the ship immediately." "Understood." Akuro opened the hatch and leapt out, slamming it closed behind him. "How may I serve?" Adib asked. Once again, Kuyahai was impressed with her. She had adjusted quickly. "Search the emissary for weapons, then alert the ship, Porel. The status code is Malcor. Farve, see to the driver." "Yes, Onel." "What have you done, Voyle?" Kuyahai wondered, as he gunned the engine to life. Voyle raced for the vehicles, weaving between piles of rubble as plasma bolts swept overhead, and solid rounds exploded around him. Sometimes a whiplash of electricity crackled past, but he sensed that the warden was only trying to slow him. "You want me alive. You want to know how I work, or why I don't." Up ahead, the armored car and the rearmost truck began to reverse along the road. Urzel and the other two Gavisa crouched in the truck's back, exchanging fire with the watchmen. Unlike the raiders' antiquated guns, their pulse rifles punched through the mutants' armor with ease, forcing them to stay in cover or die. Even the tank-like warden had retreated behind a wall. Suddenly, Voyle felt a ferocious pride in his Xenos liberators. In a galaxy drowning in corruption, they were surely, perhaps, the only hope. Guvisa Ur! Be swift! Stormlight transmitted. Voyle saw Kuro leading the rest of his team against the lead truck. The warden had left a pair of watchmen behind, and they had taken cover behind the driver's cabin, one on either side, where they held his comrades back with alternating volleys. Two Guvisa were already down, and Voyle cursed as another blasted from their feet. "Unity!" he growled, and swerved towards them, sighting down his rifle as he charged. It was a precious weapon, ill-suited to such assaults. But he knew its rhythms better than his own mind, and a third shot brushed the nearest watchman's hood, setting it alight. The fourth bore a molten crater in its chest as it turned, throwing it backwards. An obscene hissing bubbled from its flame-wreathed mask as it tried to level its rifle at him. With a roar of loathing, Voyle barreled into it, sending it crashing into its comrade. The impact threw him to the ground, but he kept firing, riddling the entangled watchman with plasma bolts. He didn't stop, not even when they fell, and then fell still. His hatred was too deep, too hungry, and the hunger gazes back at him from the void, as it is carved out in his soul. And then it speaks, for it has a voice. Voyle! Voyle! Someone shouted, calling him up. He stifled a snarl as he recognized Stormlight. "We must go," his commander snapped. "The truck! No time! More enemies come!" The fire warrior jabbed his rifle at the road. A bipedal walker was striding toward the wreckage of the vehicle that had blocked the convoy's path. It was similar to the one Voyle had spotted earlier, but its saddle was fitted with a massive cannon. The gun's spinning barrel was still smoking from the destruction that had wreaked on the obstruction. "Move, Voyle!" They sprinted after the retreating vehicles, following the surviving soldier who accompanied Akuro. Both the captured vehicles had picked up speed now, but they were still hobbled by their inability to turn on the narrow road. As the fleeing trio drew level with the car, a bolt of electricity struck the Govisa, throwing him against the vehicle. Voyle leapt over the charred corpse that rebounded into his path and glanced over his shoulder. The warden was marching across the rubble in pursuit, flanked by her surviving watchmen. Worse still, the Strider was bearing down on the car with frightening speed, its cannon spinning up the fire. Moments later, a storm of high-velocity rounds rained down on its prey. "We're done," Voyle realized, ducking as ricochets whistled past him. Suddenly, the car thrust forward, its engine roaring as it accelerated towards its hunter. The Strider lurched off the road, but the vehicle veered after it, its iron-shod tires clattering over the debris. There was a thunderous crash as it rammed into the automaton. The Strider's legs buckled, and its saddle plunged forward, sliding along the car's roof and plowing a deep fissure in its wake. Voyle and Akuro dived aside as the wreckage hurtled past them, still bearing its stiff-backed rider and cannon. The gun detonated when it hit the road, vomiting a fireball into the dark sky. "Sacred throne," Voyle growled, dredging up an old imperial curse as the car whirred out of control and overturned. It spun about on its roof, shedding its armor as it screeched along the ground. Caught in its path, the warden had swept up and down, along with the watchman flanking her. Finally, the car's momentum gave out, leaving it wedged halfway in a mound of rubble. "The Seeker!" Akuro yelled over the transmitter. He was already on his feet, racing towards the wreckage. "Rouse yourself, Porel," the Seeker commanded, his calm voice cutting through the cacophony that lingered in Adib's ears. Ignoring the protests of her shattered body, she uncurled from the fetal huddle she adopted and rolled to her knees. Kuyahai's sensor-studded faceplate loomed into view, appraising her. You are fortunate. Did you send the signal? Yes. Just before. Then come, we cannot linger here. Kuyahai turned away, ducking under the seats that hung from the inverted roof like stalactites. Through the smoke-filled gloom, Adib saw that the others had been far less fortunate. Faisal lay beside her, a spar of metal jutting from his chest. Dauk was on the cabin's far side, slumped against the hatch, the top of his head mashed into a ragged crown of blood and bone. The timekeeper was sprawled brokenly across the drive panel, his robe smoldering. Tread carefully, Kuyahai cautioned, as he stepped over the gaping fissure, running through the floor. Choking on the smoke, Adib moved to follow. As she climbed over Faisal's body, his eyes opened. Adib, what? His words splintered into a blood-flecked cough as he clutched at her. She took his hand instinctively, gripping it as spasms rippled across his body. The predator glimpsed earlier was gone, along with its baleful magnetism. In death he is only himself, she said. The emissary still lives, she shouted to Kuyahai. His injury is mortal, the seeker replied. You cannot help him. Reaching the hatch, he heaved Doc aside and tugged the opening lever, but it wouldn't budge. As the emissary's convulsions subsided, Adib leaned in close. The cog eternal, she urged. What is it? The truth, Faisal. Told you truth. Greatest good. His head fell back, revealing a circular scar under his chin. That is a lie, Adib said sadly, but I believe it is yours, old friend. She released Faisal's hand and crawled back towards the seeker. As she approached the fissure, an electronic burbling sounding from somewhere below. Her drone. She leaned over the rift's lip and reached down, expecting to touch ground, but there was nothing. The car must have come to rest above a cavity. She stretched further, and her fingers brushed against smooth metal. Seeker, A cold blue light flared into life below, dazzling her. She jerked away, but something seized her wrists in a vice-like grip. Do not be alarmed, a sterile voice boomed. Your security is my primary directive. Adib shrieked as the warden yanked her through the fissure. Watchman, heading this way, Chassel, Boyle warned as a group of robed figures approached on the road ahead. You must delay them. Yes, Chassel. What else was there to say? They cannot abandon an ethereal. After the crash, they'd climbed to the stranded car, where the fire warrior was wrestling with the hatch while Boyle covered the road. It hadn't taken long for more of the Order's troops to arrive, but as they drew closer, he saw there was something new amongst them. Something much larger. He sighted down the scope and grimaced. The hulking figure was swathed in the customary purple robes, but it was almost twice the height of its fellows. A bulma's helmet encompassed its head and shoulders, locked into place by heavy chains that crisscrossed at its chest. Its visor was carved into a likeness of the cog, with a single lens at the center, and smoking sensors affixed to each tooth. The giant's right arm split at the elbow, spawning a pair of armored tentacles that were wrapped around the haft of a massive industrial hammer. Its right arm was a weapon in its own right, bulging into a serrated claw that dragged along the ground behind it. They've given up on hiding their secrets, Boyle thought, targeting the cog-faced hulk. As his plasma bolts seared its helmet, the giant swung its hammer to protect its lens, almost as if it had read his mind. Moving like clockwork, the watchmen raised their rifles and retaliated with a volley of bullets, then stepped aside, opening a path for their champion. I can't put that thing down, Voyle realized. This is where I die. Then lower your weapon and live, the voice suggested. It spoke fluently now, its words eloquent with authority. Voyle couldn't remember why he had ever questioned it. Because you were lost, child. There was a metallic creak behind him. Voyle turned unsteadily and saw Kuyahai emerge from the vehicle. I will assist the others, Seeker, Akuro said, his voice seeming to come from a distant, meaningless place. They are gone, Kuyahai said. Porel Adib, all of them, Stormlight. The ethereal turned to Voyle as if to speak. Instead he moved, whipping a metal tube from his belt and whirling it towards the dazed men. It elongated in both ends as it swept through the air, its telescoped elements snapping free with a statico burst of clicks. In the heartbeat it took to complete its arc, it had become a staff. It struck Voile's helmet and threw him off balance. As he fell against the vehicle, he saw the Seeker twirl the weapon back to thrust it forward, into the visor of the giant that had climbed up behind Voyle while the voice held sway. The blunt tip shattered the mutant's cyclopean lens and drove through whatever lay below. Mont Ka! The Seeker shouted, and the behemoth shuddered as the staff's blade sprang free inside its skull. Kuyahai twisted the weapon, then wrenched it free, tearing away at the creature's visor, along with most of its face. The giant toppled backwards. Voyle glimpsed the protean morass of tendrils and broken bones inside its helm. Kuyahai leapt into cover as the watchmen answered their champion's death with a salvo of bullets. Your actions have invited great danger, Govisa Ui, he said to Voyle. Yes, Seeker, Voyle answered, lowering his head. Later, Kuyahai whirled his staff, and it contracted back into a tube. We must go. Support team, what is your status? Akuro transmitted as they retreated down the mound. The truck is clear. Do you need us, Chassel? Urzel replied. Negative. We are en route to you now. The voice almost had me, Voyle thought. Child, you must... No! Voyle hissed, biting his lip as he drew blood. Get out! Get out of my head! But now that it had tasted its soul, he knew it never would.